Welcome to the channel where legends sleep. Tonight's story takes us to the sun-scorched shores and labyrinthine shadows of ancient Greece, where marble gods watched from impossible heights and mortals dared to dream beyond their station. This is a tale the Greeks told in hushed reverence, a warning woven into myth, carried across millennia like smoke on warm Aegean wind. It is the story of a boy born of genius and imprisoned by fate, whose father crafted wings from feathers and wax and whispered careful words of caution that young hearts so rarely heed. There is a sky in this story, vast and golden and terribly beautiful. There is a sea, dark and waiting below, and somewhere between the two, suspended in a moment that has haunted human imagination for thousands of years, there is Icarus, reaching, always reaching, toward a light that was never meant for him. So lie back, breathe slowly, and let the ancient world take over. There is an island in the middle of the world's oldest sea, and on that island there is a tower, and in that tower there lives a man who once built a monster's house. His name is Daedalus, and the boy, sleeping in the corner, one arm thrown over his face against the morning light, is his son. Crete is beautiful, if you are free to look at it. The hills roll down to a sea that changes color with the hour, green at noon, pewter at dusk, black as cedar smoke long after the sun has gone. Wildflowers push through the pale rock in spring. The wind comes off the water, carrying salt and something sweeter, almost like honey, though no one has ever quite named it. It is the kind of place a man might choose, if choosing were still something men like Daedalus were allowed to do. But Daedalus does not choose. He is the property of a king. King Minos rules Crete from a palace at Knossos, a place of painted corridors and cool stone floors, and servants who move like shadows and speak only when spoken to. He is not a cruel king exactly. He is the more difficult kind, entirely reasonable, until you have something he needs. Then he becomes a door that will not open from the inside. He had needed Daedalus badly enough. He had summoned the craftsmen from Athens with gifts and flattery and promises. Then, once the great work was done, he had found reasons, polite, unanswerable reasons, why Daedalus could not leave. The great work, that is what the people of the palace call it, when they must refer to it at all, which is rarely. Most of them do not speak of it directly, the way you might avoid naming an illness that frightens you. They say the structure, the enclosure. Some simply look away. Daedalus calls it by its name, the Labyrinth. He built it himself, stone by stone and corridor by corridor, designed with such particular genius that a man who entered it could wander for the rest of his living days and never find the center, never find the edge, never find a wall that led somewhere familiar. He built it to hold the Minotaur, that unhappy creature, half man and half bull, which was itself a kind of punishment visited on Minos's household for old sins Daedalus had no part in. He had not been asked whether he wanted the commission. He had simply been told what was needed, and being Daedalus, he had made it perfectly. That is the trouble with being the best at a thing. The world does not let you stop. The tower where Daedalus and Icarus now live stands at a distance from the palace, close enough to the cliff's edge that on windy nights they can hear the sea working at the rock below. It is comfortable, as prisons go. There are blankets. There is food brought twice daily by a boy who never meets their eyes. There is a window, one wide window facing west, which at certain hours in the long afternoons fills the room with a light so amber and slow-moving that it seems almost solid, almost something you could hold. Icarus spends a great deal of time at that window. He is 11 years old, or perhaps 12. Daedalus has lost count, and Icarus has never been much interested in keeping track of the years, only the days, only this exact moment, only whatever is directly in front of him. He is the kind of boy who notices everything and sits still for nothing. He asks questions the way other children breathe, without deciding to, without apparent awareness that the person being asked might be tired. Why does the falcon hold its wings that way when it turns? If you dropped a stone from this window, how long before it reached the water? What is on the other side of the horizon? Is there always more sea, or does something else begin? Daedalus answers when he can. He is not by nature an impatient man, and there is something in his son's relentless curiosity that he recognizes and cannot help but love, even when it exhausts him. The boy has his father's eyes, quick and dark and always measuring something. He has his father's hands too, fine-boned and precise. He will be a craftsman if he is given time. He will be extraordinary if he is given the chance. Those are the words that keep Daedalus awake. If. Because Minos is not finished with them. The king still summons Daedalus every few months, still presents him with new problems that only a mind like his can solve. A mechanism for the palace gates, a waterway through difficult rock, a device for measuring the depth of wells. Daedalus solves each one. He has no choice, but each solution buys them another season of comfortable captivity, not freedom. And with each season, Icarus grows taller, and the window seems smaller, and the sound of the sea below the cliffs grows harder to ignore. Some nights, Daedalus stands at the window, after his son has fallen asleep, and watches the birds move in the last of the light. Petrels, mostly. Occasionally a harrier sweeping low over the headland with that loose, effortless glide that makes flight look like an afterthought. He watches the way they read the air, tilting, adjusting, leaning into invisible currents, as though the wind itself were a path with logic to it. He is, above everything else, a man who solves problems. He cannot look at those wings without his mind beginning, quietly and without his full permission to work. In the corner, Icarus shifts in his sleep, his arm falling away from his face. He is dreaming, probably. He dreams often, and with great enthusiasm, and in the morning he describes the dreams at length, whether or not anyone has asked. Tomorrow he will have questions about birds. Daedalus is almost certain of it. He turns from the window. The amber light has faded now into a softer gray, the color of the sea in stillness. He sits. He thinks. The feathers on the ledge move slightly in the evening breeze. By morning, the boy had 17 questions about birds. Daedalus answered 14 of them truthfully, gave approximate answers to 2 more, and redirected the 17th, which concerned whether a gull feels joy when it dives, because that one had no answer that wouldn't break his heart a little. Instead, he asked Icarus to fetch the wax from the back shelf, the good pale block of it, and to bring the linen strips folded neatly, and to stop asking questions for a while and simply watch. Icarus, to his credit, managed this for nearly 4 minutes, but the work itself silenced him eventually, because the work was extraordinary, and even a boy who speaks before he thinks will sometimes go quiet in the presence of something that demands it. For weeks, Daedalus had been collecting. This was his gift, and also his habit, noticing things other people stepped over. A long flight feather from a white egret, stiff enough to hold its curve, smaller ones in gray and brown, from the gulls that wheeled above the shore cliffs, their cries carrying inland on mornings when the wind shifted. Soft down from somewhere he wouldn't say, hoarded in a clay jar with a lid. He had sorted them the way a weaver sorts wool, by size, by weight, by the precise angle at which each one bent under pressure before it sprang back. He had done this quietly in the evenings, while Icarus slept and the stars came out over the sea. Now he laid the feathers in long overlapping rows across the stone floor, largest to smallest, the way a bird's own wing arranged them. He warmed the wax over a small flame until it softened to honey, and then bound the quills together, row by row, threading linen through and between to hold what the wax could not reach. His hands moved the way they always moved when he was solving something, without hesitation, without wasted motion, reading the material the way another man might read a letter. Icarus crouched at the edge of the work and watched with his chin in his hands. "Is it a wing?" he said. "Or is it like a wing? That's the trick of it." The first pair took 3 days. The second pair, shaped a little smaller for narrower shoulders, took 2, because he had already solved the problems the first one had posed him. When they were finished, he hung them from the ceiling beams and stood back to look at them, and the white feathers shifted in the draft from the window like something still breathing. Icarus stood beside him and said nothing at all. So the teaching began. Not the flying, not yet. First, the wearing, which was its own discipline. Daedalus strapped the wings to Icarus's arms with the linen harness he'd designed, checking each binding the way you check a knot before you trust your weight to it. He adjusted the angle of the leading edge. He had the boy spread his arms slowly, hold the position, feel where the structure pulled and where it gave. The feathers caught the light from the high window and threw white flecks across the walls. "Walk," said Daedalus. Icarus walked, arms out, picking his feet up high with the unconscious dignity of someone who knows he looks slightly ridiculous and has decided not to mind. The wings swayed and steadied. A few loose feathers drifted to the floor. Good. Now tilt them. Just the wrists, not the elbows. Good. Stop. Hold that. He watched the angle, made a small adjustment to the linen at the left shoulder, and nodded to himself. They worked this way for several mornings. The stone floor of the workshop became mapped with fallen feathers. Icarus learned the weight of the wings, learned how to let the air press up beneath them rather than fighting it, learned the particular stillness required of something that meant to move. He was a quick student when the subject interested him, which, Daedalus had to admit, it plainly did. There was a focus to the boy in those sessions that he rarely showed elsewhere, something quiet and uncharacteristically patient behind his eyes. But there came an evening when the light was long and amber across the sea, that Daedalus sat his son down on the stone bench near the window and said the things he had been carrying since the first feather. He had practiced this. He had arranged the words carefully, the way he arranged materials, in order of importance, without ornament. Still, when the moment arrived, the words came out differently than he'd planned, slower, rougher at the edges. He told Icarus that the wings would hold. He believed this. He had built them to hold. But they had one weakness woven into their nature, and that weakness was the wax, and the wax answered to heat. Fly too low, he said, and the sea spray will soak the feathers. They'll grow heavy. You'll lose the air beneath you before you know it's gone. He paused. Fly too high, and the sun will do what the sun does to wax. Icarus was looking at him with full attention, which was not always guaranteed. So there is a middle way. Daedalus said, not the lowest and not the highest. You will follow me. You will watch where I go, and go there too. You won't climb above me. He looked at his son steadily. I need you to promise me this. I promise, said Icarus. He said it simply, without the performance of seriousness, and somehow that made it worse. Daedalus looked at his son's face, the easy certainty in it, the complete absence of fear, and felt something move in his chest that had no name in any language he knew. He had built the labyrinth to hold a monster. He had built the wings to free a boy. Both things had required the same mind, the same hands, the same long patience with difficult materials. Yet, standing there in the last of the evening light, looking at Icarus, who was looking out toward the sea with something luminous in his expression, Daedalus understood that this creation was different from any other he had made. Every great thing he had ever built, he had built from the outside in. He had stood apart from it and measured it and improved it and understood it completely. But he could not stand apart from this. He was inside this one. He always had been. The wings hung from the ceiling beam behind them. The feathers moved in the evening breeze coming off the water. Outside, the sea lay vast and open and silver and indifferent. neither promising anything nor refusing it. Daedalus watched his son's face a moment longer. Then he looked away, out at the water, and let the silence between them say what the words had not quite reached. They would go at first light, he had already decided. The guards changed shifts in that gray hour before dawn, and the watch on the sea cliffs was thin and tired, and looking at nothing. They would go then, before the sun climbed, while the air was still cool and the wax was hard and trustworthy. One day more, Icarus turned from the window eventually and asked whether they might eat. And Daedalus said yes, and the evening settled around them like it always did. The oil lamp lit, the bread broken, the boy talking and the father listening, both of them in the same small room. Both of them, for this one last ordinary night, still on the ground. Morning came without ceremony. No light on the water, no bird song, just the gray hour before dawn when the world holds its breath, and two figures moving quietly through it. Daedalus had been awake since the dark. He dressed Icarus in the wings first, working each strap across his son's narrow shoulders with the careful attention of a man who knows that every buckle matters. Icarus stood still for it, which was unusual. He was not given to stillness, but something in the hour quieted him, and he let his father's hands move over the fastenings, without complaint, without questions, without the usual bright commentary on everything he noticed. Daedalus paused once, fingers resting against his son's collarbone. "Steady," he said. Icarus nodded, though neither of them was quite sure which one the word was meant for. They climbed the cliff path in silence, the wings folded against their backs like sleeping things. The stone was cold under their feet. The sea below was the color of pewter, vast and still, and the sky above it had just begun to pale at its eastern edge, a thin seam of rose and amber opening along the horizon, as though the world were remembering, slowly, what color was. At the cliff's edge, Daedalus spread his wings. The feathers caught the first breath of wind off the water, shivering slightly, and for a moment he looked like something borrowed from another kind of story entirely. Icarus watched him and felt his heart do something complicated in his chest. Then Daedalus looked back at his son. "One long look. Remember," he said. "I remember," Icarus said, and they leapt. The cliff fell away beneath them, and the sea swelled up vast and cold, and then the wings caught, and the air became something solid, something real, a great lifting hand pressing upward through every feather, and Icarus gasped, not in fear, in recognition, as though some part of him had always known what this felt like and had simply been waiting the whole of his life to feel it confirmed. They rose. The island of Crete shrank below them, its pale cliffs shrinking to a rim of white at the edge of the water, the labyrinth invisible from here, just a darkness among darker hills. Icarus looked down at it and felt, for the first time in as long as he could remember, something simply leave him. The weight of those stone corridors, the smell of the dungeon, the sound of the sea heard only through a window too narrow to matter. Gone. All of it gone, replaced by open air in every direction. He laughed. It startled Daedalus, who glanced across to find his son already level with him, wings moving in long, easy strokes, face turned up toward the brightening sky with an expression of pure, uncomplicated joy. For a while, they flew together. Daedalus kept his eyes on the horizon, measuring distance, watching the angle of the light, reading the winds the way a sailor reads the surface of the water, looking not at what is there, but at what it means. He tracked the islands below as they slid past like dark shapes beneath a shallow sea. Paros, Delos, the long pale strip of Naxos, its hills still wrapped in morning shadow. He named them to himself like a navigator. He was always, even now, doing the work of reaching somewhere safely. But Icarus was not navigating. Icarus was flying. He tilted his wings and banked in a long, slow curve, watching the shadow he cast on the water far below, impossibly small, a dark bird shape skimming across the silver surface. He climbed a little and felt the air change, cooler, thinner, sharper in his lungs. He climbed a little more. Below, the sea shone. The sun had cleared the horizon fully now, and the light was everywhere, pouring across the water in long, golden roads that seemed to lead upward as much as outward. Icarus looked toward it, and the warmth on his face was extraordinary, something beyond warmth. It pressed against his skin like a living thing, like a hand cupped around his cheek, like the attentiveness of something immense noticing him. He had never been noticed by anything immense before. The warning moved through his memory briefly, like a fish glimpsed in deep water, present for a moment and then gone. His father's voice, not too high, the wax, the sun. He knew this. He knew all of this. But knowing a thing and believing it applies to you are two different countries, and Icarus had never learned to cross between them. He climbed. The wind changed as he rose. It lost its sea salt softness and became something leaner, more insistent, streaming past his ears with a sound like distance itself. The islands below grew small as coins. Daedalus was a moving speck beneath him, growing smaller by the moment. And Icarus watched him shrink with something that was not indifference but was not concern either. Just the simple, dazzled arithmetic of a boy discovering that the world is larger than he imagined, and that he fits inside it, and that the fitting is extraordinary. The sun poured down. He felt the first drop before he understood what it was, something warm on his wrist. He looked at it, another drop, running along the inside of his forearm, slow and amber. He looked at his wings. The feathers at the leading edge were shifting. Not from the wind. Something beneath them was changing, the structure softening, the architecture of all those patient hours dissolving in the one way his father had known it would, and told him and told him. For a moment, suspended in the high, bright air, Icarus was entirely still. Then the wings came apart. not all at once. That is the detail no one tends to dwell on, but it matters. It was not sudden. A feather went, caught the wind like a blown leaf, spiraled away. Then another. Then the whole of the right wing simply ceased to function. The wax gone, the linen sagging, the feathers scattering outward in a wide, pale arc that must have looked from below briefly beautiful. He fell. He fell through the same air that had held him moments before, and the sky was just as wide and just as blazing blue, and the sea was just as silver, and none of it had changed at all. The world had not rearranged itself for this. The sun did dim. The islands did not flinch. Only Icarus moved, falling now in a long, whistling arc toward the water that had always been there, waiting with the patience of something that has never had to hurry. Daedalus heard it, not the fall itself, but the silence where his son had been. He turned in the air and saw the feathers spread across the sky above him, scattered like seeds, like snow, like the casual aftermath of something that had ended. He saw them and he understood them, and the understanding moved through him the way a cold current moves through warm water, not loudly, not dramatically, but completely. He called the name. The sea held it for a moment and then released it, and there was nothing after it but the wind and the light and the long, enormous, indifferent silence of the sky. Below, the water closed, smoothly, without violence, the way water always does, filling every space, accepting everything, keeping nothing visible but the surface, which already looked the same as it had before, blue and silver and quietly lit, as though nothing had passed through it, as though a boy had not, just moments ago, been alive and laughing in the air above it. Daedalus circled. Once, twice. The water gave nothing back. He hovered there a long time, wings moving slow and steady, the craftsman's body doing its patient work, even while everything else in him went somewhere unreachable. Below him the sea shone. The sun continued its crossing. The islands sat where they had always sat, indifferent as old stones. Then, at last, he turned. He turned west, toward Sicily, toward the shore he had calculated and aimed for, the destination that still existed even now. Even so, his wings carried him. His hands held their angle, his eyes fixed on the horizon. But the sky behind him was full of feathers, settling slowly toward the water, and each one was a word he had no one left to say. He flew west until the sea changed color beneath him, from the deep Aegean blue to something paler, more forgiving, the green-gray shallows of a shore that did not know his name. Sicily rose out of the haze like a rumor becoming solid. Low cliffs, salt grass bending in the afternoon wind, the smell of thyme on warm stone. Daedalus landed the way a man sits down when his legs have finally given out. Not gracefully, not with ceremony. He folded his wings against the rocks and stayed there for a long time, watching the light, move across the water. There was no one to receive him, no welcoming crowd, no king at the harbor wall, just the ordinary world going about itself, indifferent to what had happened somewhere over the open sea. A gull cried and wheeled away. Somewhere behind the cliff, a goat bell rang and fell silent. He removed the wings. He did it slowly, unlacing each strap with careful fingers, the way you might undress a wound. He set them on the rock beside him and looked at them for a long while. These things he had made, these impossible, feathered, ruinous things, and then he covered them with his cloak, so he would not have to keep looking. And so it was that the greatest craftsman in the world sat alone on a Sicilian cliff and did not move until the sun touched the horizon. Some griefs are too large for gestures. Some losses do not announce themselves with weeping. Daedalus simply breathed and stayed and let the hours pass over him like water over stone. He would build again. That was the terrible truth of him. In the months that followed, King Icarus of Sicily would give him shelter, and Daedalus would pay for it in the only currency he knew. Intricate pipes that carried hot spring water through the palace walls, a golden honeycomb so cunningly made that Aphrodite herself, it was said, could not tell it from the real thing. His hands would keep moving. They always did. Grief had not made him someone else, but the wings he never made again. As the night deepened over Sicily, far to the east, the sea was completing something. Icarus had fallen fast, the way young things fall, all at once, without the long resistance that age puts up. The water had taken him in without drama, without malice, the way the sea takes everything eventually. And there, in that wide blue quiet, something shifted. The waves closed over the place where he had entered and smoothed themselves flat. The feathers scattered across the surface, bright as snow. But the sea remembered. Sailors would name it for him, that stretch of water between Samos and the coast of Asia Minor, where the wind sometimes rose without warning and the surface caught the light in a way that made you feel watched. The Icarian Sea, his name written in water, which is the most permanent kind of writing there is, because water does not let you cross it out. Not far from there, in the centuries that followed, poets would argue about him. Some said he was a lesson, a warning against pride, against the recklessness of boys who do not listen. They pointed to the wings of wax and called it obvious, called it a parable. But here is what the parable leaves out. Icarus knew the risk. He had heard his father's voice, low and trembling in the tower room, going over it again and again. Not too low, not too high. Follow me. Stay close. He was not ignorant. He was not careless in the way of someone who does not understand the stakes. He understood them. He simply decided, somewhere above the shining Aegean, in the impossible freedom of his first and only hour of flight, that the sun was worth the reaching. There is a kind of courage in that which has no clean name. It is not bravery exactly, and it is not foolishness exactly. It lives in the narrow space between them, where humans have always lived at their most alive. The boy who ate the light, the boy who made the sky briefly, completely, entirely his. He fell. Yes, he always falls in every telling. Still, for a little while, for one luminous, gold-soaked, feather-bright while, he flew. And perhaps that is the whole story, underneath all the other stories. Not that ambition is dangerous, though it is. Not that fathers cannot save their children, though they cannot. Not always. Perhaps it is simply this, that the world is large and brief and astonishing, and some people, given a single hour of sky, will spend it climbing. Let them. The sea off the Icarian shore is calm tonight. It has been calm for 1,000 years, and it will be calm long after the last person who knows this story has laid down and slept. The water moves in slow, dark circles, carrying nothing and everything. Feathers long dissolved, a name still sounding in the depths, the echo of a boy's laughter on a wind that has since moved onto other shores. Somewhere, Daedalus is still sitting on his Sicilian cliff, or something like him is. Every maker who has lost the thing they made, every hand that kept moving after the heart stopped, he is watching the last light leave the water. He is breathing the time-scented air. He is, despite everything, still here. And the stars are coming out now, one by one, over the Aegean. There, low on the horizon, where the sea meets the dark, a bright one, steady, unhurried. It has been there a long time, and it will be there when you wake, though you will not think of it as his. But it is, a little. Rest now. The sea is smooth and wide and full of names. You have heard one of them tonight. Let it carry you, gently, slowly, down into your own quiet dark, where there are no warnings, no heights, no wax that softens in the noon sun, only stillness, only the soft sound of deep water, and somewhere above it, still shining, the place a boy once flew.